First of all, from Del City, Representative Scott Inman. Representative Inman.
Hey guys, wow, this is amazing. So I guess this is what it looks like when thousands upon thousands of educators tell a bunch of misbehaving politicians, don't worry about coming to the principal's office, we'll bring the principal's office to you. This is fantastic. Wow, it is an honor. I want to thank the coalition for allowing me to speak today on behalf of the House of Representatives. I see the Mid-Del sign, Del City, and my folks from Mid-Del. It's great to have you here. But this really is an incredible day. And what an unbelievable showing of support and determination for the future of our great state. From the bottom of my heart, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to be here today, voicing your thoughts and opinions about the issues facing our public schools. However, many of you may have heard that several of your elected representatives didn't want you to be here today. Right? They wrote letters and opinion pieces telling you to go home and stay away. They argued that your presence here today was a sign of greedy selfishness. And how dare you leave your schoolhouse to come to the State House, they said, right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you probably can guess, I stand before you with a slightly different message. It's a message shared by many of my colleagues and friends in both the House and the Senate. You see, we happen to believe that we work for you. And we believe that the building behind me is your building. And we know that you're here fighting for better futures for the 678,000 kids that you teach, your children and my children, and that it is our job to listen to you when you speak. Therefore, when you decide that it is the appropriate time to approach your legislature about how your representatives are underfunding and over-mandating your classrooms, whether that day be today or any day, our responsibility is not to tell you to go home and stay away, but in fact our responsibility is instead to open our doors to you, look you squarely in the eyes and say, welcome to your state capital. Now I know why you've come. You're here because the last 5 or 6 years have not been kind to public education in Oklahoma. The legislature has done little to help improve the lives of our students, but it has done a great deal more to harm them. You've already heard some of the numbers here today. Oklahoma is either 48th or 49th in the nation in what it spends on public education. While our teachers rank in the top 10 nationally, we pay them as if they were in the bottom 10. In a little more than 5 years, your leaders have cut funding for our kids by more than $200 million. That's roughly a 23% increase. Those cuts have cost us over 1,500 teachers at the same time we've seen an increase of 40,000 students. Now I know there are some of you in the crowd today from the business community, and I want to talk to you. I'd like you to imagine for a moment, if you would, that we required you to give up 23% of your revenues, significantly reduce your workforce, but dramatically increase the customers you're supposed to serve, all the while still somehow improving productivity. Right? It's nearly impossible, but that is exactly what our teachers and principals have been asked to do these last 5 years. And to top it all off, adding insult to injury, while the legislature was cutting education budgets, it was passing along more unfunded mandates and newer high-stakes tests. And then, in an act of what I can only describe as fiscal irresponsibility, this legislature, over the course of the last 5 years, has voted to support tax cut after tax cut. Just a few weeks ago, the Oklahoma House of Representatives, despite state revenues being down more than $500 million below 2008 levels when adjusted for inflation, besides being $500 million down, this Oklahoma House voted for a $200 million more in tax cuts. You heard me right. You heard me right. This legislature has cut education funding by more than $200 million, but instead of filling that hole with growth revenue, your representatives have decided that cutting $200 million in taxes would be a better way to go. It would be laughable if it wasn't so true. Now, in a little while, in a little while, you will enter this building and to encourage your elected officials to increase funding for public schools. And I want to prepare you now for what I believe you're probably going to hear, because I've heard it all too many times before. Some politician will offer you this famous retort: well, money won't solve all the problems, right?
Let's try it.
Well, let me tell you this. When they look you in the eye and tell you that, I want you to look right back at them and say, well, that may be so, but not having enough of it can sure cause a bunch of them too. Well, those are the realities facing your children's future in our beloved state. So now that you've heard what your government has done to your schools, I have but one question for you. Have you had enough? I'll ask you again, have you had enough? Well, then this is your moment. This is your time. To have thousands of you gathered here, all concerned about the same issue, is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Together, we can fight for your children. You can advocate for their futures. And the solution is simple. The request you need to make of your elected officials is easy. First, it starts with passing House Bill 2642. I want to thank my good friend and colleague, Representative Lee Denny, for authoring a bill that will ensure our public schools are at the top of the list when it comes to funding, not at the bottom of the heap. And it will ensure that our children won't have to stand in line behind high-paid lobbyists demanding tax dollars for their clients instead of sending vital resources into your classrooms. Second, we must protect our revenues. We must oppose tax cuts that will only lead to further budget cuts and increased property taxes for our senior citizens, farmers, and ranchers. In the governor's proposed budget, as you heard David say, common education is slated to receive $50 million new dollars. And that may sound okay on its face until you realize that according to the State Department, our schools will need at least $60 million to cover the increased costs. That means that in the governor's budget, there's not one new dollar to hire one teacher, to buy one new textbook, or to increase our already dismal salaries. If the legislature moves forward cutting taxes by another $200 million, it will only guarantee that our schools will fall farther and farther behind. And third, you must demand that your elected officials vote against any budget that does not increase per pupil funding this year. The budget is simply a list of priorities. And when the more than $7 billion is divided up at the end of this session, if our children are not placed as the top priority in this state, we must reject that budget until they are. And finally, the final solution is accountability. Voting for or against budgets, tax cuts, and bills like House Bill 2642, that's my job, and the job of my fellow representatives and senators. And while those votes are important, none is more important than the vote you possess. You now know the roadmap back to fiscal sanity. You know the plan to stop the dismantling of public education and to start improving it. After you meet with your elected representatives and lay out that plan, supporting House Bill 2642, opposing irresponsible tax cuts, and opposing substandard budgets, if they don't listen to you and vote the way you want them to, then you must make certain that they never have the opportunity to set our children any further behind. On election day in November, your opportunity for accountability will be at hand. Those who stand with you in support of your children should be returned to this Capitol to continue the fight. But those who do not, I repeat, those politicians who do not stand with you and your children, well, they need to hear from you exactly what you heard from them. Go home and stay away. Thank you so much, and God bless.